And so we began a journey of training journalists, engaging journalists with something that can guide us in terms of language, in terms of how to frame this issue. So we brought them together and asked them a few questions to give us a guide on what they really needed. And from there is where the journey of developing the tool began, with that SWOT analysis. And then from there, developed the tool, the validation process which he has alluded to, and today here we are.
We need to be empathetic. We need to reach to them in a point whereby we can be empathetic and show them that they are coming from a perspective that is causing harm to the girls and the women. We respect their culture, and as much as we're respecting their culture, we're also educating and sensitizing them so that they realize what they are doing is causing harm to their girls.
Editors are also human beings. They are, as she has mentioned, empathetic, but on the other hand, we have to put it as the way it is. We had to go through training, some of us, just to feel the need of, this is a girl child, and she is suffering, despite the fact that whatever is happening in the society, we have to tell it as it is. So you find some of my colleagues who are sub-editors, they go through the story, and then at the end of it, they tell you that this should be the headline for today. We want to tell the world what is happening in a certain locality or in a certain society, what is happening, so that they can also understand, yes, this is how we feel. I think that is what drives the editor, that is to come up with that kind of headline.
It's very important, for instance, when you're doing sensitization of journalists, you don't forget those ones who decide where the story goes and how the story comes out, so that you don't have that gap between the ones who are collecting the information, the ones who are piecing together the story, and the ones who edit the story. Because you may write a story, like Manzu has said, you write the story, but the editor edits the story. So the way you package your information and the way the one who edits the story understands that information is totally different. So it's very important as the civil society. So as you engage journalists, because I understand the toolkit was developed out of an assessment. So then, how do you ensure that that toolkit has an impact in the newsrooms or in the media, so that you don't come up with something that helps to highlight the FGM stories and then end up with the same problem over and over again. So actualize this toolkit to ensure that the stories that you see in the media, the stories that worry you and the headlines, you don't have that again. So that's all I can say.
We just need continuous training of journalists. The whole idea is when somebody is skimming through the newspaper, that this is a story they will read, because people don't read all stories. The only thing that attracts them that have read this is because of the headlines. So, like I say, the content of the story is within the story. The headline attracts, but how harmful is it?
I think sometimes the way these journalists approach you makes you feel like it discourages you to even continue on with your campaign. Know how to ask questions and how to approach survivors. Because we have experiences that sometimes we find hard to talk about.
There's a lot of education or educating journalists so that they can be able to understand that one, FGM is a sensitive issue that has to be approached as so. you have to apply the language and the tone that is required. You don't just go and ask questions that are going to traumatize people.
I always have to ask myself, what are the principles of writing this story and what is not supposed to be written in this story? So I always try to refer to the code of ethics, I always try to refer to the regulations or the rules or the toolkits that are there on that based on how to write the story.
Also, with the presidential declaration to end FGM by 2022, journalists are stakeholders. All of us as a nation, we are rallying behind that cause. And therefore, the way they cover the issue of FGM will contribute to how much progress we make by the time we are reaching 2020, which is next year, not so far.
In collaboration and in partnership with our critical partners, critically the Anti-FGM Board that has been providing leadership in this war against FGM, and with AMWIK, as well as with independent journalists and media actors, consultants who are from your estate, from the fourth estate, who have been critical to this particular process. We were able first to do a gap analysis with yourselves as journalists, establish what you identified as priority, and then did what we now have today eventually as the Anti-FGM toolkit, through the development of that first draft, through validation, through sharing it with some of you, until where we are today. And so indeed it is our privilege and our honor to have worked collaboratively with those of you who are in this room and those of you who are represented. It's our privilege and an honor to actually be part of, shall we say, cutting-edge instrument that brings together not just the media skills, the law, but also the practice of how we can engage in the war against FGM with our critical partner, the media.
The need for the media to tell stories from a human rights perspective. Stories that will not only inspire positive change, but that will also dignify the voices of the survivors. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what would have happened had the Daily Nation killed this story in favor of another one? What would have happened to Liz? Would Kenyans and the entire world have learned about the horrific nature of the violations that Liz had to contend with? Would Kenyans have learned more about the impunity that exists within the legal justice system? Ladies and gentlemen, if your answer to any of these questions was no, then you do understand how critical the media is as an agent of change. Even so, the media must be wary of the consequences of misrepresenting and misreporting issues, particularly those that touch on the rights of women and girls, because we understand how important it is for journalists to uphold the principles of do no harm. We saw the need to develop the toolkit that we are launching today, that is purely focusing on addressing cases of female genital mutilation. The toolkit provides easy to reference guidelines for journalists as they report on FGM. It provides an overview of the context of FGM in Kenya, speaks to different laws, and contains do's and don'ts that the journalists can adapt while covering FGM cases. We truly believe that it will be a useful resource to journalists and a notable contribution to the anti-FGM campaign in Kenya. I wish to ask the media fraternity not to tire There are still numerous stories to be told on female genital mutilation in Kenya and beyond. We have made progress, but there is still more work ahead of us. There are still many stories that remain untold. And I also urge you to take into heart the pleas that came from Aisha earlier. Report and give justice to each story as it is. I would like to end here and then take the opportunity to thank our partners, the Anti-FGM Board and the Association of Women Media, Kenya Women Association of Media, and UNFPA for the continuous partnership we have in terms of ending female genital mutilation in Kenya. And my appreciation also goes to our development partners, to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to Sacred Housing Trust, among others.
I'm very glad this morning because of this day, because this shows how far we are getting in the campaign to end FGM. I want to recognize the presence of the chairperson of the board, Madam Agnes Parillo, the presence of our partners, Equality Now, led by the director, AMWIK, thank you very much, UNFPA, our partners from Kajiado, from beyond. We have Men End FGM in the house, we have Youth Anti-FGM Network, Every Girl's Dream, and our journalists. And we will continue working and making sure that our women and girls are safe and that we will end FGM, because the media has been helping us since the coronavirus started to make sure that we reach every corner of this country. So today is a very important day for us. It's a very important in the campaign to end FGM and to end it by 2022, because the media are the ones who are going to help us. Even if us we are not able to reach the communities physically because of the COVID, the media is here with us, and the media has been working very closely with us to make sure that we reach the masses. In fact, people have been telling us, you are all over, because of the media. People are sitting in their homes when Corona came, and us, we were out there most of the time, continuing with the campaign. And the message was reaching people because of the media. If it was not for the media, people would not know what we are doing in the field. So I want to thank the Anti-FGM Board, Equality Now and AMWIK, for this toolkit. As my sister Felista had said earlier, 2017, the headlines that were coming across, we had one that said 2,000 girls have been cut in East Pokot. 2,000. If you are to go and count the number of girls in East Pokot, I'm not sure the teenage girls would reach the numbers that had been written in an article. And you know, it was like, sincerely speaking, 2,000 girls in East Pokot. And when the person was now writing the story, they obviously had to say, 7 years after the passing of the Prohibition of FGM Act, 2,000 girls have been cut in East Pokot, and the government is not taking, like the government doesn't care, you know? And you know, that's when we started asking ourselves questions. And we say, the way the media is reporting issues of FGM, what do we do? I know my sister from AMWIK, we worked with her this journey, has said that even if we say we have trained journalists, but more journalists are coming on board, how are we going to make sure that we catch up with every journalist? To make sure that they understand how to report not only on FGM, but on gender-based violence. Because the people who have been, their rights have been taken away, the way a report is done really makes them feel even like a wound that is already very sore, then someone comes and rubs on it and makes it even worse. But you know, I don't blame people because people don't understand what is this FGM. Not only the journalists, but you also saw what was happening in Parliament when they were speaking about FGM. There was a disconnect about the real human rights violation and women's sexuality. It became like a joke. FGM was being discussed like it's a joke. So, we want to ask the media to help us to package this message and reach as many people as possible, because we cannot have everyone in a room like this and we take them through training. So this toolkit for us today is a big game changer. Yeah? It's a big game changer, and we want it to be like that and to remain like that. So what we are going to do going forward with Equality Now and AMWIK, my suggestion is we move this to the training schools of the journalists. Just the same way we want to train the medical doctors and the nurses about FGM and medicalization, because even most medical doctors and nurses don't understand this FGM. I'm just going to give my story in the next few minutes because I'm a survivor. For you to understand that even nurses are very ignorant about FGM. Just the same way the medical personnel are ignorant, I know even journalists are, and many people around the world are very ignorant. That's why for us to be able to reach as many journalists as possible, why don't we start engaging the colleges that train journalists, issues of journalism and communications, so that they can include reporting on GBV, especially FGM, now that we are pushing and making sure that we end it in Kenya by 2022, to be included as a, even just as a one-line subject in the training school, so that they can be able to understand by the time they leave college, how do they report on gender-based violence, and especially female genital mutilation, which we all know is one of the worst forms of gender-based violence, meted on women and girls. So, the local radios, like my sister has said, Aisha, the local radios, we know that we are using a lot of vernacular radios now to create awareness on female genital mutilation. How do we reach out to those local journalists at that level who report on FGM and even interview survivors of FGM? I've gone to radio. And what Felisa had talked about, people calling in while you are in the radio and asking questions. People make fun, especially men. Eh? They make fun of FGM. It's like some kind of a joke. We are not going to blame anyone. I think there is too much ignorance. And that's why Men End FGM is very important, because we want men to be engaged more, because they don't really understand. But the more we train men and make them understand what it really means for a woman to go through the cut, that's when men really reach the aha moment and say, surely our women have been suffering for so long, and we didn't know that they had suffered. And that's why we are saying, journalists, the voices of survivors, let's make sure that these voices are heard. Let's make sure our girls, the next generation of girls, will never go for FGM because they want to go for it. Let's not have people force our girls to go through this. And we are going to end it for sure. We are going to end it. Even if people sit and write books and volumes of books to say since it's a culture, it's not going to end. It's going to end. It's going to end because the voices that we have already been having our voices. You know, since 2014 when the board came into place and partners have been working overboard, the joint program started in 2008, the voice has been louder and louder. And now with the President's directive to end FGM by 2022, we are getting there. And every day we stand, we are saving a girl from FGM. And we are going to end it. Let us all work towards making sure that we give the frontline workers, the people at the grassroots level, let's have their voices heard. Let the journalists speak the voices of the people at the community level. And as the government of Kenya, we are committed. Even in the region, in Africa and in the world, our president has led the way. And us as the foot soldiers, we are on the ground. We will make sure that the voices of the girls and women become louder day and day, and our girls will be safe, and we will leave the world a better place, and we will leave history that we were there when FGM ended.
The Ministry of ICT, Broadcasting and Communication, as partners in the advocacy to end FGM, we, as a government, we know we have a role to play, and I know you remember that also KBC is part of the ministry, as one of the sagas within the ministry. But we are here as part of the committee of the multi-agency. We want to offer and to solutions, especially on IT-based solutions on how advocacy can even be done just with the touch of a button or even through SMS models and media to make sure that the youths are reached in different ways. This toolkit will really assist and even reach the grassroots, the journalists, journalists, especially the vernacular. Because at the moment, you realize when we go to our villages, up country, or even Nairobi, the vernacular radios, there are lots of people who are listening to radio in their languages. And therefore, when you listen to someone talking about in your own language, there is more acceptance of the messages, despite being very far away or having even the Anti-FGM board. I will never even had any sensitization workshop there. So we know the radio is quite an influencer.
However, thanks to technology, so I acknowledge all protocols observed there, the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocols observed. It is very refreshing when I hear people talk, the survivors, the stories about how the strides we have made in FGM, and I tell you, I'm so grateful to be alive at a time such as this, to see the campaign against FGM working. It was never working before, it was still under the table, no one could talk about it. Then it was brought to the table, it was tabled in Parliament, and now it is working. Can you imagine? We are almost to the end of FGM. Anyway, let me read the speech because I'm so excited. So the fight against female genital mutilation, for me, has been a long journey. As most of you know, that I was the founding chair of the Anti-FGM board, but more so maybe what I would like to note is the fact that I came to Parliament with one aim, to bring to the public conscience the issues of FGM. I still recall when I started in Parliament and my colleagues would call me Obiria FGM, because I made sure every time I say something, there was FGM that was affecting just the life around, in my surrounding, in my environment. So it is heartening to know that the fight against FGM has garnered along the way critical partners with the civil society, and most relevant for today, with the fourth estate. And when I say civil society organization, I want to single out Equality Now and Faiza, because before I came to Parliament, I heard in my community that there was a white lady who had come and was talking about FGM. When I was talking about FGM in the Highlands, I was told there was another white lady in the valley who was talking my language of abandonment of FGM. Thank you so much, Faiza, for weathering all that up to where you are now. May God continue to strengthen your feet so that you could go to other villages like you came to ours to talk about FGM. But I know you will reach faster now with the fourth estate there with you, because information, social media, radio will reach faster than your feet. Thank you so much. So the media is the mouthpiece for the nation. It checks the temperature and lets all of us know how we are doing in regards of our social ethos, especially as concerns FGM. It is the media which will tell us how seriously a nation takes the egregious offense. If we as actors need to put more effort, it is the media who will also tell us, yeah, I think what is left, this is what you are missing. They are actually the scarecrow telling us there are some bugs coming here, there is this and this happening. In fact, they are the ones who will even tell us that something is happening at night. Without the media, we wouldn't have known that there is medicalization of FGM because somebody picked it up and put it in the media, and we were able to know what is happening. So the media, as I said, is the mouthpiece of the nation, and most for the voiceless girls who are still tied to their culture, they don't know what to say. And where I am today, we are launching a book on Arise and Shine, and this book is just written, it's about the cultural practices, it's about FGM and all our other GBV on children. And you see, all this is media which will send it out to the people. So I do not think that we have lost the battle as far as the prevalence is concerned. We are told we are at 21%. And Loloju, you have put it so well, that it's not just about figures, it's about people we know. Yeah? These are people, friends of ours, and especially when it comes to those from FGM practicing communities, they know they are not just numbers, they are people. We are at the last mile, and it is usually at this mile that you either win or you lose the war. The media will enable us to reach the least and the farthest in ensuring that they know they deserve bodily integrity and that they deserve to live a life free of female genital mutilation. It is the media that brings the voices of survivors to the fore, enabling all of us to hear from them loud and clear that we should end FGM once and for all. With the President having declared to end FGM next year, other than the civil society and other non-state actors, it is indeed the media that will determine if we shall achieve this audacious goal. It is the media, and I say they run faster than us, through the FM stations, through the print media, the social media. It is the media who will help us win in this last lap. So for this to happen, the media must be properly equipped to do so. Equality Now, AMWIK, and the Anti-FGM Board must therefore be commended for originating and producing the comprehensive anti-FGM journalist toolkit to equip journalists both in the newsrooms and in the fields to help us fight this war against FGM. All of us seated in this room today went to school, and every subject had a formula. And every subject had a formula of how to do it, like the Pythagoras theorem in mathematics. We have the chemistry formula. And so this toolkit, which is being launched here today, is actually the formula for what others, after this audience today, those who come in again, they know this is the way to do it. And of course, if other emerging issues, it must be the baseline of how to report. So thank you so much, AMWIK, Anti-FGM Board, and Equality Now. So this toolkit provides in one place media guidelines, good practices, legal knowledge, and comparisons that will enable journalists to report on the strides on FGM. It is therefore my honor and privilege to declare this anti-FGM toolkit officially launched. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, so we're taking some photos.
I was very interested to know the role of media in terms of how they can be able to amplify the voices in the fight of FGM and child marriage, which is very rampant in the areas that we come from. And as a leader, we've seen many challenges, many times that leaders have not been able to properly articulate the strategies that aim to fight FGM. And this is due to the fear, sometimes they might lose critical voting blocks among the very traditional masses.
The toolkit that enables FGM to, enables journalists rather, to be able to report on FGM. It means that we're giving people information, journalists the tools to be able to actually report properly, give proper information, be sensitive to survivors, and also educate everybody else on what FGM is. And what that means is that together we are actually forging a way forward on how we are going to end FGM, the strategies that we are going to use, what is working, what is not working, where is FGM reducing, what are these numbers we're hearing about when we're talking about percentages. This is the information that journalists need to be able to actually inform us and educate us and the world as a whole, not just us as FGM activists. And I'm really excited. I'm hoping, just as we discussed at the meeting, that this tool is going to be moved forward to institutions of learning. Because as we've said with medical students and with medical professionals, some of them don't come from FGM practicing communities, so they don't actually know what FGM is. And so when an FGM survivor presents to them, they really don't know what to do. But having that conversation from the institutions will actually help us bring all these other players and stakeholders into ending FGM. So I'm very excited, and I'm hoping to be further engaged as journalists and us as a whole as well, because it teaches us on how we are able to engage with our survivors and the community when we are educating them about FGM. The do no harm principle, what does that mean? I'm really excited, and I hope to continue being part of this conversation.
Kwa siku ya leo ni siku muhimu sana na imekuwa na ushindi kwa sababu hii tools itaenda kufanya kazi huko kwa grassroots.
I am truly humbled today to take part in this launch of the toolkit on ending FGM, and I believe it's a very important tool in the sense that whether we are engaging men and boys out there in the community, whether we are talking to the survivors of FGM, whether we are talking to the young children, whether we are talking to the elders, the media is like it's something that brings us together and brings these voices together in the sense that media is not biased towards reporting on whether it's the survivors, whether it's the elders, whether it's the men or the children. It's a voice that brings everyone together. It's a voice that ensures that everything that is happening out there in the communities is amplified and ensures that everyone out there in the society gets the message. That's why the toolkit is of essence. It's something that has been long overdue. It's something that we ought to have done a long time ago, in the sense that it will be an eye-opener to the journalists out there, to the many vernacular radio stations out there, to the many people who are doing the reporting out there, to the people who are sending tweets online and also doing online interviews. It will make them to be able to see how they can do proper reporting when it comes to FGM and ensure that they are sensitive and they pass the right message out there that is going to ensure that we end FGM as soon as possible.
The media for us is very, very important, more than anything else, because the people I can reach in a forum are about 50 or 100, especially now with the COVID-19 guidelines, but the media can reach millions of people. Whether it's TV or radio or social media, we are able to reach millions of people. And the voices of the radios and the TV are very important. When I was growing up, there was no TV in our homes. The radios that were there were very few. We could only listen to KBC. And we didn't have anybody telling us about female genital mutilation and the negative effects. So we never knew. We stayed in our village or in an enclosed village where we could not hear all this. But today we are using the vernacular radios. Everybody switches onto their vernacular radio. And so through the media, we are able to reach the unreached in this country.